In January of 1998, Lawrence County Deputy Kyle Dinkheller was murdered in the line of duty.
This execution nationwide in 2015 happened a couple hours ago in Butts County.
Good, come on back here. Keep your hands out of your pocket. Keep your hands out of your pocket, sir. Sir.
The Georgia Supreme Court denied a stay of execution for Brandon earlier this afternoon.
I was a deputy at Lawrence County Sheriff's Department.
We were employed together at the Lawrence County Sheriff's.
If you're not related to the police officers, or if you're not from those communities, it can become easy to move on.
It's scheduled to begin in less than an hour. In a 6-1 decision, the Georgia Supreme Court denied a stay.
Kevin Johnson will be put to death today despite one last effort by his legal team.
Kevin Johnson has sat on death row for killing Sergeant William McEntee.
I think that was like the hardest part to cope with, you know, being a protected person and not being able to do anything.
Whether there's any reason that the lawful execution of Kevin Johnson for the murder of William McEntee should not proceed.
Kevin Johnson will be put to death by the state of Missouri November 29th.
All the slanders and comments and judgments and unfounded and simply not true.
Accusations claiming a former St. Louis County prosecutor sought the death penalty specifically for black defendants, but not white defendants.
The options jurors had were not the same as today. Life without parole was not an option.
And I felt that as she was coming over to my apartment and as she...
I still don't know who it was that I saw, but I thought it was Farr standing there.
I cannot wait for the day when I see him laying on that table. And he left. Apparently he left to go and collect his money from...
Frada is set to be put to death on January 10th, 2023.
The case of Kevin Johnson was found to be tainted by racism by a special prosecutor. In any case, Missouri is about to slay him. Facing the impending execution, a daughter's journey. Corey Ramey didn't talk to her father growing up about the day he would be ended. She remarked, "It was too uncomfortable for me." In 2007, when she was just 4 years old, her father, Kevin Johnson, was transferred to Missouri's Ending Row. She used to visit him when he was a kid at the Potosi Correctional Facility, which is about an hour and a half from St. Louis. Together they played Scrabble and snapped Polaroid pictures that could be bought for $1 each. There wasn't anything to say about Johnson's offense that Ramey didn't already know. When he was 19 years old, he slayed a police officer, and everyone in the area knew this. Though difficult, it wasn't a secret, as she put it. Most significantly, she still saw Johnson as she did before. As Ramey got older, they discussed the typical topics parents talk to their children about: school, family, and his expectations for her future. Johnson contacted Ramey on January 1st, 2022.
Good morning. There is a last-minute effort to halt this execution.
What is happening today at the Missouri Supreme Court is pretty unusual. It's actually unprecedented in Missouri.
When she was 18, sounding different, she remarked, implying that he might not be around for long. He was kind of like throwing hints at me. She felt uneasy during the chat. It was obvious that he was attempting to get her ready for the ending date. Ramey learned she was pregnant later that evening. Ramey had graduated early from high school with his support and was pursuing a career as a nurse. So she was afraid about upsetting her father. She had worn a t-shirt with a picture of her father, together with her maternal grandmother and mother, who had been slayed in front of Ramey just months before Johnson was found guilty.
Whether there's any reason that the lawful execution of Kevin Johnson for the murder of William McEntee should not proceed.
People who I can get in contact with to help me further my career in the nursing field that I want to do.
Underneath her crimson graduation gown, on the t-shirt it said, "I did it for y'all." Ramey received a call from her aunt in the latter part of August. She informed Ramey that her father had been given a date for his ending and forewarned her that the news would be all over it. A little while afterwards, Johnson called. He told her, "They came and got me and told me to pack all my stuff." His beheading was scheduled for November 29th.
As Kevin came to the realization that a fractured faith is better than no faith at all.
Kevin Johnson has sat on death row for killing Sergeant William McEntee.
After just 2 weeks, Ramey gave birth. She shared infant photos of herself, her father, and her son, Caius, on Facebook. She took him to visit Johnson in October, allowing him to touch his grandchild for the first time. Ramey remarked, "That was a very beautiful event." Early in November, Ramey called The Intercept from the nursing home where she works between shifts. She hadn't even told her employer about her father's impending ending. much less taking time off to deal with it.
Kevin Johnson will be put to death today despite one last effort by his legal team.
The man on death row convicted of shooting and killing a Kirkwood police officer.
She was still working out a number of logistical issues, including this one. One more was even more intimidating. She was too young, 19 years old, under Missouri law to witness the ending. She wasn't sure of her whereabouts when the state slayed Johnson. Being there at the prison seemed significant. Ramey asserted that even if her father couldn't see her, he would at least know that I'm there with him in his final moments, and he wasn't alone.
Governor Mike Parson said today he will not grant clemency in this case.
That's right. Today at 6 p.m., Kevin Johnson will be put to death by lethal injection at the state prison in Bonne Terre.
Ramey felt it wasn't enough as Johnson's ending date drew near. The American Civil Liberties Union submitted an emergency lawsuit on November 21st, requesting intervention and granting her permission to witness the ending. She declared before the court, "My father has been the only parent for almost all my life. He holds a special place in my heart. I would sit at his bedside if my father were in the hospital dying, holding his hands and praying for him till he passed away as a comfort for both of us, as an essential step in my grief process." There are still a lot of legal challenges ongoing in the courts.
I think that was like the hardest part to cope with, being a protected person and not being able to do anything.
Advocates, including Missouri's NAACP, say he should not be executed.
Despite Johnson's ending being just days away, the most crucial issue is whether Johnson's conviction was unconstitutionally contaminated by widespread racism. As assessed by a special prosecutor appointed to review the case, the prosecutor is currently attempting to get Johnson's ending sentence overturned. St. Louis County has gained notoriety for institutional racism in the 17 years since Johnson was given an ending sentence, with its policing and legal procedures being the most egregious examples. The dynamics in Johnson's case and how the ending penalty has been used to uphold the status quo are exemplary.
State of Missouri, you have to be at least 21 years old to witness an execution.
Past doesn't define you. You can do something horrific in your past, but you could be a better person today.
Sean Nolan, the special prosecutor's attorney, believes that the finding requires stopping Johnson's ending. Nolan added, "But the state of Missouri is about to execute people based on the color of their skin. Civilized countries don't do that." The crime. On July 5th, 2005, Kevin Johnson, then 19 years old, was visiting his great-grandmother when two police officers entered the house and began looking through his white Ford Explorer. Johnson was under probation because of a domestic disagreement involving the mother of his little daughter, Corey, who was his ex-girlfriend. The police wanted to arrest him and maybe tow his vehicle because he had broken the terms of his probation.
Again, a 19-year-old kid who made a horrible mistake, but he definitely is remorseful and he deserves to live.
So he does way more than what most people would feel like they would be able to do behind.
The Missouri Supreme Court has overruled a motion to stop his execution.
Johnson had a plan to prevent that from happening. Joseph Long, his younger brother, whom everyone called Bam Bam, received the keys to his car from him. In Meacham Park, a rich, largely white Kirkwood, Missouri suburb that stretches west of St. Louis, Johnson and his siblings had grown up in challenging circumstances. Kirkwood is one of the many suburbs that sprawl there. Johnson's father spent the majority of his life in prison, while his mother had a crack addiction. Johnson and his siblings had endured cruelty and neglect, at times being abandoned for days at a time. Johnson took very special care of 12-year-old Bam Bam, who had been exposed to cocaine while still in the womb and was born with a congenital cardiac condition that required immediate surgical surgery.
Johnson's daughter says she wants to be there.
All the slanders and comments and judgments and unfounded and simply not true.
In order to make it appear as though his grandma Pat Ward owned the Explorer, Johnson ordered Bam Bam to take the car keys to her house next door. Bam Bam stood up and ran to the next house. Johnson saw from the window, and what he saw started a series of events that he would always regret. Johnson reported that Ward left the house holding the keys and yelling for the police to arrive immediately because Bam Bam had collapsed. When the police showed up at Ward's front door,
Their family members should be able to be there in those final moments.
Rami should get a decision by this weekend.
Johnson was unable to see Bam Bam but observed one of them step over something as he entered. As an ambulance and a third officer, Kirkwood Police Sergeant William McKenty, approached, sirens blasted. Despite his family's warning to stay home or risk being arrested, Johnson was tempted to run next door and aid. Jada Tatum, Johnson's mother, arrived and was pushed back by McKenty, according to Johnson, who nearly knocked her off the porch. Johnson later admitted in court.
He was a wonderful child. I'm sure he's a wonderful child.
Also, Sergeant McEntee leaves behind 3 children and is a 20-year veteran once again.
It looked to me like they were fighting, and I started to get angry. After a while, his mother simply stopped and went outside to begin sobbing. Johnson witnessed the emergency personnel departing with Bam Bam on a stretcher over 20 minutes after the ambulance had arrived. His feet were hanging over the side, and his shirt was gone. Soon afterward,
Johnson's daughter and several anti-death penalty activists are also calling for Johnson's death sentence to be overturned today.
Kevin Johnson will be put to death by the state of Missouri November 29th.
Ward came back and told him that Bam Bam had left. Later, an autopsy confirmed that he had passed away from a heart failure. Johnson claimed that at first, he was too surprised to respond. Then, in a fit of rage, he kicked his bedroom door's hinges off. He reflected that perhaps this wouldn't have happened if he hadn't asked Bam Bam to take the keys. Why had Ward requested the police for assistance, and they had responded so casually?
Because I have a son who needs his papa, and I'm a daughter who needs her dad.
As Johnson was convicted 15 years ago of killing that veteran officer.
Perhaps Bam Bam would still be alive if he had been taken to the hospital sooner. Johnson went outside in an effort to relax. He took a revolver out of the trunk of his car and put it in his pocket since, as he subsequently admitted. It may get him into even more trouble if the police return to tow the car. People questioned Johnson about whether Bam Bam had indeed passed away.
Johnson's first trial was declared a mistrial. The second ended with first-degree murder conviction.
Justice for Kevin Johnson! Justice for Kevin!
As he walked around the tightly knit Meacham Park, he admitted to his cousin that he believed the police were to blame. Nearly 7:30 p.m., returning to Meacham Park in response to a call concerning firework being set off, McKenty was there. An expended firecracker was being carried by one of the 3 teenagers when he pulled his cruiser alongside them. Johnson walked by on the passenger side while he spoke to them via the driver's side window. McKenty looked at him, and the officer grinned. Johnson drew his weapon. Witnesses remembered him yelling, "You slayed my brother."
Now, Johnson is scheduled to die by lethal injection tomorrow night in Bonne Terre.
He's been more supportive in my life than most of my friends' fathers.
As he fired at the automobile, hitting McKenty several times. One of the shots entered McKenty's jaw after going through his cheek. McKenty was able to start the automobile despite being severely hurt, and it jerked up the street before colliding with a tree. Residents nearby were yelling. When Johnson ran into his mother, she inquired about his actions. He told her Bam Bam was slayed by the police. She answered, "No, Bam Bam just died." She broke down in tears.
His children were devastated that their dad was murdered, being 7, 10, and 13.
You know, it's moving and stuff, but 3 years, you don't know any better. You just know you're hungry and stuff.
Pleading with him to think about his daughter, Corey. Johnson recalls leaving to rush to meet Corey. By squeezing between 2 homes, he was able to return to McKenty's wrecked car. On the sidewalk, the bloodied officer was kneeling as Johnson approached McKenty from behind and shot him in the head. Onlookers dispersed. Shortly after, McKenty was declared deceased. Johnson sped away in his Explorer past a line of responding police vehicles. He later said that it was only then that he realized what he had done.
Accusations claiming a former St. Louis County prosecutor sought the death penalty specifically for black defendants, but not white defendants.
We got separated maybe early 90s from each other.
3 days later, when he surrendered himself, Johnson only asked that Corey, his toddler, be allowed to see him by the police. they declined.
To be executed in less than 24 hours now for the shooting death of Sergeant William McEntee 17 years ago.
Notify the Department of Corrections that there are no legal impediments to the lawful execution of Kevin Johnson.
Past doesn't define you. You can do something horrific in your past, but you could be a better person today.
The trails. The slay of McEntee made St. Louis front page. Police told the media it had been more than 100 years since a police officer has been slayed in Kirkwood. The father of three, 43, had been a Kirkwood police officer since the 1980s. Police scattered balloons and flowers on the grass in front of the police station. Robert McCulloch, the prosecuting attorney in St. Louis, stated that he was thinking about asking for Johnson's ending. McCulloch had built a reputation for obtaining ending sentences throughout his 17 years in office and had a particular interest in punishing officer slayers. Paul McCulloch was one of the best-known officers in the St. Louis police force, according to a 1964 news item that praised him as a renowned canine trainer whose dog had a talent for sniffing out drugs. McCulloch was just 12 years old when his own father was laying in the line of duty. For the slay of McCulloch, a black man called Eddie Glenn was found guilty and given the ending penalty. The sentence was changed to life in prison after the ending penalty was declared unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1972.
And was on his hands and knees in his own pool of blood when Kevin Johnson shot him 2 more times.
Johnson could be put to death as soon as 6 p.m. tonight in Bonne Terre.
The state and the Children's Division and the Family Court probably let Kevin down and didn't provide the services they needed.
As Kevin came to the realization that a fractured faith is better than no faith at all. And I believe that that's what's getting him.
Many residents of Meacham Park believe that the real circumstances of McEntee's slaying were not being covered, despite the headlines trumpeting a potential ending sentence against Johnson. Family members claimed that Johnson had been upset by Bam Bam's passing, in part because police had been prioritized his arrest over aiding his brother, according to a black writer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Following the columnist's discussion of Bam Bam's burial arrangements, readers wrote in to complain that the author had slandered a fallen officer and excused the slayer. Johnson was put on trial twice, the first time in March 2007. Both sides' families were present in the courtroom, along with numerous police officers. McCulloch acknowledged Bam Bam's death as the cause of McEntee's slay in his opening remarks to the jury. However, he denied the allegations that McEntee abused Tatum, Bam Bam's mother, or that police failed to act promptly to save the child. Tatum urged McEntee to sit with her on the porch as they were attempting life-saving measures when he arrived, according to testimony from an EMT. Most significantly, McCulloch disagreed with the idea that Johnson had behaved rashly and without thought.
The emotionally charged moment of his life. He was watching his little brother Bam Bam die, for God's sake.
Bob McCullough's office has only sought the death penalty for black defendants in police death cases.
I said, if I can erase that day, I would.
The evidence was clear that there was racial discrimination infecting this prosecution.
Johnson's allegation that he was on his way to see his daughter when he ran into McEntee again was refuted by the man, who contended that Johnson had taken a gun from his car with the clear to intent to slay a police officer. McCulloch claimed that Johnson had returned to the scene after learning that McEntee was still alive and had brutally carried out the slay. He told the jurors, each one of those shots, in and of itself, is deliberate. Graphic testimony was given. One Kirkwood police officer found it difficult to speak as he remembered crouching down to roll McEntee over, only to see bits of his head fall over his lap. McEntee's co-workers vividly detailed the horror. Johnson's cousin claimed that he puked after seeing McEntee get slayed, leading Johnson to brand him a coward. McCulloch painted Johnson as a danger who would slay again if given a chance, despite the fact that the majority of the witnesses who knew Johnson claimed during cross-examination that they had never had issues with him before. In addition to the cold-blooded slay of McEntee, Johnson allegedly reportedly attempted to assassinate potential witnesses who could testify against him. The case of Sergeant McEntee, a man who was shot and slayed by his brother, was a complex and contentious one. The defense, led by McCulloch, claimed that Johnson had threatened the jury and that he had discussed an extensive plan to have important witnesses assassinated by a jailhouse informant with a lengthy criminal history. However, some witnesses appeared hesitant to accuse Johnson, and some provided police statements only to retract them when forced to testify. The jury found this argument strong, and when it came time to decide Johnson's fate, the jury overwhelmingly ruled the first-degree slay was not the cause of death. The deliberations were acrimonious, with some black jurors yelling things about their neighborhoods and "you people."
Tonight, they remain hopeful that a stay of execution could be made in Johnson's case.
Children were devastated that their dad was murdered, being 7, 10, and 13.
Kevin Johnson will be put to death by the state of Missouri November 29th.
12 men and women that sat on Kevin Johnson's jury were fair. They were qualified to hear the case, and they were not biased.
Another black juror claimed that the trial judge had summoned her to meet with her after a white lady on the jury accused another of acting in an intimidating manner. The jury claimed that despite claims of intimidation, the overwhelming police presence was what gave her the most anxiety. A new trial was held in 2007 when a jury consisting of Knight White and 3 black members. Other adjustments were made, such as substituting a video of the crime for the jailhouse informant's account of a plans to slay witnesses. McCulloch also underlined that McEntee had not abused Johnson's mother and supported testimony about the cops' efforts to save Bam Bam. One of the officers who arrived on the scene was questioned by McCulloch, who said that he just tried to get her to go outside and he was kind of holding on to her, trying to hold her up. She had a great deal of grief for her son. St. Louis County Medical Examiner Mary Case testified as McCulloch's last witness at the retrial, outlining the injuries each gunshot caused to McEntee. She displayed a model skeleton where the bullets had entered his body, pointing out that while McEntee might have survived some of the most severe wounds, being shot in the head was impossible to survive. Upon verdict, Johnson was found guilty of first-degree slay on November 8, 2007.
It does not benefit this state. It does not benefit our society to kill Kevin Johnson.
Convicted of killing a Kirkwood police officer in 2005.
Johnson's attorneys argue race played a factor in the death penalty sentencing.
It's hard because I know that if it does happen, he's not going to be here.
The Missouri Supreme Court has overruled a motion to stop his execution, meaning it will go on as planned tomorrow.
The 3 siblings of McEntee gave testimony about the void his passing had caused in their family. Johnson's defense attorneys painted him an unloved youngster who had never lived in a secure environment. He claimed that because of his terrible upbringing, he shouldn't face just punishment and doesn't deserve it. McCulloch claimed that Johnson's failure to take advantage of his opportunity was the true issue. Defense counsel Karen Kraft argued that there was more to the case than what the jury had seen before they decided to sentence her client to demise. A witness for the defense said that McEntee repeatedly pulled her over while she was living in Meacham Park. Kraft claimed that she deliberated long and hard before deciding to summon this witness, as she didn't like speaking ill of the dead. Meacham Park. Johnson had been awaiting ending for 7 years when, following another homicide in St. Louis County, McCulloch's name suddenly appeared on the national scene. Unarmed black teenager Michael Brown was slayed in 2014 by a white police officer called Darren Wilson. As a result of the slaying in Ferguson, the Black Lives Matter movement gained momentum and incorporated the slogan, "Hands up, don't shoot," to its vocabulary. Wilson's case would become a symbol of systemic racism and the lack of consequences for violent police officers because of McCulloch's handling of the prosecution.
Despite these last efforts from family, friends, and otherwise, Johnson is scheduled to die by lethal injection.
If my brother was executed, it's gonna break me all the way down.
Again, a 19-year-old kid who made a horrible mistake, but he definitely is remorseful and he deserves to live.
Authorities have said that Johnson was angry, believing police did not do enough to save his younger brother.
By blaming the media for the demonstrations and saying that the grand jurors, who were primarily white, gave up their lives to see the investigation through to its conclusion, McCulloch added gasoline to the fire when he revealed that a grand jury had failed to indict Wilson. Long, simmering conflicts over how St. Louis County's black people are treated by law enforcement were made public by the Ferguson protests. Although the Department of Justice ultimately decided not to bring charges against Wilson, it did find that Ferguson police had routinely violated the constitutional rights of black residents. illegally detaining and arresting them as part of a plan that put the collection of fines and fees ahead of the responsibility to maintain public safety. In addition to not being diverse, the department did not interact with the community, disregarded reports of police misconduct, and engaged in actions that promoted distrust and resentment. Such police misconduct, along with the complaints it inspired, was not limited to Ferguson. Johnson's situation can only be completely appreciated in the context of the community's relationship with police. According to lifestyle residents of St. Louis County like Michelle Smith, co-director of Missourians for Alternatives to the Ending Penalty, Smith remarked, "There was a Meacham Park before there was a Ferguson." Meacham Park was founded in 1892 as an unincorporated black community about 14 miles west of St. Louis, surrounded at the time by farmland and forests. The sand streets bear the names of notable figures and locations from black history. Meacham Park was booming at the beginning of the 20th century, despite lacking running water and sewage.
The last minute, just 24 hours before Johnson is set to be executed by lethal injection.
What is happening today at the Missouri Supreme Court is pretty unusual. It's actually unprecedented in Missouri.
Outside the court, there was a demonstration against the planned execution, more protests.
At 7:31 p.m., the 5-minute timer was set. At 7:40 p.m., Kevin Johnson was pronounced dead.
However, as suburban construction grew, Meacham Park became vulnerable due to lax state legislation limiting the creation of new municipalities, which led to a drawn-out dispute over Kirkwood's annexation by rich, white Kirkwood. Creating municipal boundaries was a method of segregation, according to Colin Gordon, a history professor at the University of Iowa who has written about race and inequality in St. Louis County. As a result, some people are subjected to official surveillance while others receive public assistance, according to Gordon. Kirkwood undertook its first land grab in the late 1950s when it annexed a lucrative commercial area of Meacham Park with no compensation to the neighborhood. When Interstate 44 cut through the area in 1956, it paved over homes and left a portion of the neighborhood stranded. Kirkwood authorities were wringing their hands in the background because they didn't want to be responsible for Meacham Park's service delivery. But they also didn't want the neighborhood's alleged issues to spread to Kirkwood. Mosquitoes bred in the failing septic tanks in the Meacham Park, or potential criminals raised in an environment devoid of police protection, are not respecters of municipal boundary lines, city leaders wrote in a proposed response plan in 1966. The Meacham Park homeowners finally consented to an annexation plan in 1991. It was promised that jobs for locals would be created through commercial development along a specific stretch of the area's western perimeter. The development's footprint grew, absorbing 100 homes and forcing neighbors to relocate for what ultimately became a wall of big box business that further cut off Meacham Park from the rest of Kirkwood.
Losing a child, my heart can't take no more. It cannot take anymore.
They didn't have a chance to say goodbye. It took 17 years of grieving and pushing forward.
Former St. Louis County prosecutor used racial bias in several cases, including Johnson.
Childhood friend of Johnson's, Damian Pullum, claimed in his affidavit that police once maced a group of youths for loitering in the church parking lot during a high school football game and hassled Johnson's grandmother's spouse for polishing his car in the driveway. In several of the affidavits, McEntee was particularly mentioned as aiding in the harassment. Pullum claimed that McEntee earned the nickname Tackleberry because he was big and he would tackle and beat people up. Students recounted anecdotes about Mac to the Riverfront Times. According to Ramona Miller, a science teacher at Kirkwood High School in 2005, one of the stories they gave was about how Mac escalated one incident to the point where another officer had to step in. I had never heard the kids talk specifically about a person, so that was concerning to me, Miller said to The Weekly. She claimed that despite contacting the Kirkwood police with her worries, she never got a response. I often wondered if we could have avoided a lot of this if that had been taken more seriously.
Last-minute efforts to stop an execution. The man on death row convicted of shooting and killing a Kirkwood police officer.
Sergeant William McEntee was ambushed and shot 5 times in his police car. He crashed his car.
For more than a decade, Kevin Johnson has sat on death row for killing Sergeant William McEntee.
The chief had no memory of Miller's complaint, a KPD representative said to the St. Louis Beacon. He's not denying it, the spokeswoman insisted. We received several complaints. Smith emphasized that the allegations against McEntee were not intended to condone slaying. We wish McEntee was still in attendance. She was direct about the part he and the other officers played in Meacham Park though. He was a terrorist in that neighborhood, which is the reality of the situation.
I didn't have anything, no money, no real place to live.
And Kevin Johnson decided to be judge, jury, and executioner. When he walked back to Bill's car.
I remember when I had a contact visit in the county jail.
For her PhD research, sociology and African studies professor Andrea Boyles of Tulane University spoke with residents of Meacham Park about their interactions with police. Later, that project was published as the book Race, Place, and Suburban Policing. Boyles noted that Meacham Park and Kirkwood had a long-standing racial dispute, and that ultimately there were a number of things that transpired in the annexation process, including full loss of land and people losing their homes or being bought out, feeling like they had been manipulated. Perhaps the most obvious sign of their dissatisfaction was their mistrust of the police. They told me about the entire process, including the city council, not just the police, she continued. And they already felt like, in many respects, that they had been indifferently characterized as baggage or weight or throwaways that needed to be saved by the neighborhood rich white people. She was told by locals that after violent episodes like the slay of McEntee, they felt as though the entire neighborhood was being blamed for what occurred. The racial, spatial, and political climate of that place made it ripe for people to lose in different ways. According to Boyles, and without justifying or condemning it, the outcome would be the loss of countless lives and the potential threat we currently face from another. A cloud over the case. Voters removed Wesley Bell, the incumbent St. Louis County prosecutor, following Ferguson ending his almost 30-year tenure in office. In order to evaluate officer-involved slayings, claims of police misconduct, and claims of unfair prosecution or conviction, Bell established a Conviction and Incident Evaluate Unit in 2019. This signaled a change from McCulloch's previous practices. In order to address the issue of false convictions within the criminal justice system, Missouri legislators established a statute in 2021. According to the law, the prosecutors who initially brought the case against the defendant may make a move to overturn the judgment there. If constitutional error at the original trial undermines the confidence in the judgment, the trial court must hold an inquiry.
Missouri Supreme Court obviously takes these matters very seriously. They have granted oral argument.
But that final decision will be up to the Missouri Supreme Court.
I've been doing this work for a long time, and I've never had a case where the prosecutor asked to stop the execution.
Johnson's attorneys requested that the prosecution examine his convictions in December 2021 on the grounds that racial bias rendered it inadmissible under the Constitution. However, there was a conflict of interest right away because Steele, one of Johnson's trial defense attorneys, now works for Bell. Bell's office informed the Missouri Supreme Court in a letter dated July that it was evaluating Johnson's case and seeking a special prosecutor to lead the investigation. The request was ignored by the court, which scheduled Johnson's ending for November. Edward Keenan, a lawyer in Kansas City, was chosen by the St. Louis County Circuit Court to serve as the special prosecutor in October. Keenan analyzed more than 31,000 pages of case-related paperwork before submitting a request to the trial court, asking for Johnson's conviction to be overturned.
This is a case where it's the prosecutor asking to stop the execution.
That all petitions have been denied by the U.S. Supreme Court, and the department could begin with the execution sequence.
Which they don't do very often in these situations.
He cited a note that he discovered in the files of the prosecution, which revealed that McCulloch's group had planned to exclude black jurors from Johnson's second trial. It is also instructive to look at McCulloch's past history of charging decisions, which are made at the sole discretion of the prosecutor. Throughout his tenure, McCulloch was much more likely to ask for the ending penalty when the victim was a white person. According to a recent study by political science professor Frank Baumgartner at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, even after accounting for several factors, McCulloch's office was 3.5 times more likely to request the ending penalty when the victim was white. Emails from The Intercept requesting comment from McCulloch received no response. McCulloch recently refuted accusations of racially motivated convictions in an interview with the Riverfront Times, defending his track record in the process. The attorneys of Keenan and Johnson both filed an appeal of the decision with the Missouri Supreme Court, requesting that it stay the ending so that the lower court may hear the evidence. According to Johnson's attorneys, this court should consider the special prosecutor's motion to vacate for what is the state's confession of error, which has not been refuted. The state admits long-standing and pervasive racial bias in St. Louis County's handling of this case.
Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt notified the Department of Corrections that there are no legal impediments to the lawful execution of Kevin Johnson.
And so I had some communication with other people here and told them, like, this is what you need to do. You need to communicate with her as much as possible.
Yeah, he always tells me to do my best.
And other death-eligible prosecutions, including the office decision with regard to which offense to charge, which penalty to seek, and which jurors to strike. The day before Johnson is scheduled to pass away on November 28th, the Missouri Supreme Court will hear oral arguments. Witnessing death. Representative Cori Bush of St. Louis and Representative Emmanuel Cleaver of Kansas City both issued letters 2 days before Thanksgiving. They pleaded with Missouri Governor Mike Parson to pardon Johnson. They stated, Johnson's brutal ending will not cure any of the systemic problems plaguing Missourians and people across America, particularly the scourge of gun violence. It will cynically use the ideas of justice and fairness as a cover to simply ruin yet another family and community. Johnson's mercy petition, which stressed his youth at the time of the crime, was a source of inspiration for the letter. The U.S. Supreme Court prohibited the ending of juvenile offenders who committed capital offenses in 2005, the same year Johnson slayed McKenty. Scientific studies showing how much the human brain develops during the adolescence served as a foundation for the Roper v. Simmons decision. It is now generally known that the areas of the brain responsible for impulse control are still developing well into early adulthood, and the conditions like poverty, abuse, and neglect have a significant impact on this process. The American Psychological Association came to the conclusion earlier this year that Johnson's age in 2005, which is between 18 and 20, should be included in the Roper prohibitions. Parson informed reporters on November 23rd that he did not intend to step in, despite the fact that he has not yet made an official declaration about clemency.
Governor Parsons' office was asked whether there's any reason that the lawful execution of Kevin Johnson.
Now attorneys and advocates are looking to Missouri's governor and the state Supreme Court to spare his life.
For the murder of William McEntee should not proceed. The answer was to proceed.
Today, Johnson's history in prison serves as a proof of how young individuals develop beyond their sins. According to his mercy petition, which included numerous letters from guys who were detained and praised him as a mentor and role model, he is regarded as a model inmate at Potosi, a group of educators who have maintained since Johnson's trial that he was a good kid who did a sad act of violence on one of the worst days of his life, are among his most vociferous defenders. Johnson's primary school principal, Pam Stanfield, who has gotten to know him very well over the years, said of him that he is a loving father whose relationship with Ramsey far exceeds what many fathers are able to do while living outside prison walls.
He's been more supportive in my life than most of my friends' fathers.
I think that was like the hardest part to cope with, you know, being a protected person and not being able to do anything.
That are out in the regular world, living and have their freedom.
Stanfield highlighted over the phone that Johnson had expressed profound regret for slaying McKenty. If he could go back and change something, he would give anything, she claimed. But he is so much more than that too. The day after Thanksgiving, Ramey's legal team held a press conference to announce her battle to see her father put to demise. Ramey intended to make a statement, but found it difficult to do so. The remainder of her writing was read aloud by Smith of Missourians for alternatives to the ending penalty. In the statement, Ramey mentioned how she had witnessed the slaying of her mother when she was 4 years old, saying, I have suffered so much loss in my life. The thought that she would not be around to witness her lone surviving parent's final moments was agonizing. It makes no sense that under Missouri law, an adult who is 19 is not mature enough to be present at the person's ending if the state of Missouri thinks that my father's action at the age of 19 make him mature enough to be executed.
We're asking the court to find that this irrational and illogical law discriminates against Corey.
However, in a recent interview, Parsons said that the execution for Kevin Johnson will continue.
Missouri shouldn't use it as an excuse to keep her from bearing witness for her father when he is taken away from her.
Later that evening, a federal judge dismissed Ramey's legal objection. In his opinion, Missouri had a legitimate reason to want to keep kids from witnessing death. He mentioned Roper in 2005 as an example of a significant Supreme Court decision that limited the use of life sentences for juveniles. In his letter, he expressed concern that young people may be more inclined to act out in ways that are disruptive, endangering the solemnity and decorum of the ending. The lawyer defending Johnson, Nolan, stated, "We are heartbroken for Corey. This case is tragic in every way, but we assure Corey that we will continue to fight for her father." On November 29th at 7:40 p.m., Kevin Johnson received a fatal injection to end his life. He declined to offer a parting remark. Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson of the U.S. Supreme Court disagreed with the full court's decision to deny a stay of ending. Sean Nolan, Johnson's attorney, issued the following statement. Without a doubt, Kevin was executed by Missouri because he was black after being put on death row and prosecuted in a capital case. The governor and the Missouri Supreme Court put an end to the special prosecutor's pursuit of racial justice, and Kevin was executed despite the fact that the current prosecutor appointed by the court found that Kevin's ending sentence was the result of blatant racism by St. Louis County District Attorney's Office. People should be held accountable by the law for their actions, not for who they are. However, Kevin was slain in Missouri due to the hue of his skin. Shame on them all. Exploring the tragic final moments of a corrupt veteran, unraveling the complexities surrounding his demise. Crime. The fateful incident involving Deputy Kyle Dinkheller unfolded on January 12, 1998 in Lawrence County, Georgia, leaving an indelible mark on the nation's consciousness. This tragic event emerged from a routine traffic stop that spiraled into a fatal shootout between Dinkheller and Andrew Howard Brannon, a Vietnam War veteran who was pulled over for speeding. What makes this incident particularly noteworthy is that it was captured on a personal video recorder affixed to Dinkheller's patrol car dashboard, a recording that has since become a crucial training tool in police academies across the United States. As the confrontation escalated, Deputy Dinkheller, armed with his semi-auto pistol, faced off against Brannon, who wielded an Iver Johnson M1 carbine. The exchange of gunfire resulted in Dinkheller successfully injuring Brannon. Despite this, Brannon, exhibiting a chilling determination, managed to reload his weapon and deliver a fatal shot directly into Dinkheller's eye. Following this heinous act, Brannon quickly fled the scene in his Toyota pickup truck, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable tragedy. The following morning, law enforcement authorities discovered Brannon still within Lawrence County, concealed beneath a camouflage tarp and nestled within a sleeping bag. This apprehension marked the beginning of the end for Brannon, as he was promptly taken into custody for the slaying of Deputy Dinkheller. The arrest brought a modicum of solace to a community grappling with the loss of one of its own. Andrew Howard Brannon's legal defense was built upon a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, asserting that he has suffered a post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as a direct consequence of his harrowing experiences in the Vietnam War. This claim, however, was met with skepticism. The existence of Dinkheller's record video provided a stark and unimpeachable account of Brannon's actions, ultimately leading the jury to conclude that he had deliberately and sadistically taken the life of the deputy. 2 years after the tragic incident, on January 28, 2000, the jury reached a verdict, finding Brannon guilty of the slaying of Deputy Kyle Dinkheller. Just 2 days later, on January 30th, he was sentenced to demise. The judicial process, while protracted, ultimately delivered a verdict that reflected the gravity of Brannon's crime. 17 years and 1 day after the chilling events of January 12, 1998, justice was finally administered. On January 13, 2015, Andrew Howard Brannon was executed by a lethal injection. This somber conclusion marked the culmination of a long and painful journey for the family, friends, and colleagues of Deputy Dinkheller, as well as for the community he served. The slaying of Kyle Dinkheller stands as a poignant reminder of the dangers that law enforcement officers face in the line of duty. The inclusion of the personal video recording added a layer of undeniable truth to the proceedings, ensuring that justice was meted out in the face of a heinous act. The legacy of this tragedy endures, not only in the hearts of those who knew and loved Kyle Dinkheller, but also in the training rooms of police academies, where his memory lives on in the pursuit of safer communities.
In January of 1998, Lawrence County Deputy Kyle Dinkheller was murdered in the line of duty.
Who murdered a Lawrence County Sheriff's deputy in 1998.
The Georgia Supreme Court denied a stay of execution for Brannon earlier this afternoon.
How you doing today?
One of the films you can watch this weekend at the American Film Fest is the documentary titled Dinkheller.
Come on back. How you doing today?
It's scheduled to begin in less than an hour. In a 6-1 decision, the Georgia Supreme Court denied a stay.
My son's name is Kyle Dinkheller.
My name is Ashley Dinkheller.
Driver, step back here to me. Come on back here for me.
Confrontation and shootout. On January 12, 1998, in Lawrence County, Georgia, Deputy Kai Wayne Dinkheller, concluding his shift with the sheriff's office, encountering a speeding Toyota pickup truck near Dudley. The vehicle was clocked at an alarming 98 miles per hour, 158 kilometers per hour, prompting Dinkheller to initiate a routine traffic stop on Whipple Crossing Road, adjacent to Interstate 16. Little did he know that this seemingly routine encounter would escalate into a confrontation that will leave an indelible mark on law enforcement history. Both Deputy Dinkheller and the driver, Andrew Brannon, emerged from their vehicles, initiating the encounter with customary pleasantries. However, the situation took a dark turn when Brannon, defying expectations, abruptly thrust both hands into his pockets. In response, Dinkheller swiftly instructed him to reveal his hands and keep them within plain view, recognizing the potential threat that had emerged. Brannon's demeanor swiftly shifted to nonchalant to belligerent. He began to shout provocations at the deputy, taunting him to take action. In a surreal display, Brannon engaged in a frenzied dance, wildly gesticulating in the middle of the road. Dinkheller, fully cognizant of the escalating danger, urgently radioed for backup, while sternly commanding Brannon to cease his erratic behavior and approach the police cruiser. As Brannon observed Dinkheller's request for additional units, he chose to disregard it, instead advancing aggressively towards the deputy. Faced with Brannon's mounting aggression, Dinkheller made a tactical decision to retreat, all the while issuing stern directives and utilizing his baton to maintain a safe distance. The dashcam footage poignantly captured Brannon's defiant proclamation of being a goddamn Vietnam combat veteran, a stark testament to the intensity of the confrontation. Despite Dinkheller's valiant attempts to de-escalation, Brannon defiantly returned to his pickup truck, where he retrieved an Iver Johnson M1 carbine concealed beneath the driver's seat. Taking cover near the driver's side door, Brannon's actions signaled a perilous escalation of the situation, as he readied himself for a potentially deadly exchange. Positioned near the passenger door of his cruiser, Dinkheller continued to issue commands. However, Brannon turned towards Dinkheller, brandishing the rifle and discharging multiple rounds. Dinkheller's initial shot, it is speculated, may have served as a warning, as it missed its mark. Tragically, the deputy's subsequent attempts to defend himself were met with Brannon's relentless onslaught. Despite sustaining grievous injuries to his arms and legs, Dinkheller displayed a remarkable fortitude, managing to reload his weapon. In a final act of valor, he inflicted a gunshot wound to Brandon's abdomen before succumbing to his own wounds. As Brandon callously declared, "Die fucker," he administered the fatal shot directly into Dinkheller's right eye, sealing the deputy's fate. With the devastating culmination of the shootout, Brandon, displaying a chilling resolve, retreated to his truck and fled the scene. His departure left behind a tableau of unimaginable sorrow and loss, forever etching the events of that tragic day into the collective memory of the community and law enforcement at large. The events of January 12, 1998 serve as a blunt reminder of the unpredictable and often perilous nature of law enforcement work. Deputy Kyle Wayne Dinkheller's valiant efforts to maintain control and protect himself ultimately fell short, leaving a legacy of sacrifice and bravery. The detailed account of the confrontation and shootout stands as a somber testament to the courage and dedication of those who stand on the front lines of public safety. Aftermath. The devastating events on January 12, 1998, involving Deputy Kyle Wayne Dinkheller and Andrew Brannon, reverberated through the community of Lawrence County, Georgia, and beyond. The shocking confrontation and shootout, captured on Dinkheller's dashcam, would lead to a series of legal proceedings culminating in Brannon's ending. This aftermath, marked by Brannon's arrest, trial, and eventual ending, sheds light on the pursuit of justice and the enduring impact of this tragic event. The morning after the fatal confrontation, Brannon was apprehended without incident. His surrender was marked by a chilling statement to investigate authorities, declaring, "They can hang me." This grim acknowledgement hinted to a profound understanding of the gravity of his actions, setting the stage for the legal proceedings that would follow. Nearly 2 years after the tragedy, on January 28, 2000, the legal system rendered its verdict. Andrew Brannon was found guilty of the slaying of Deputy Kyle Dinkheller. The weight of the evidence, including the compelling dashcam footage, left little room for doubt. The court, recognizing the premeditated, torturous, and cruel nature of the crime, handed down the harshest sentence: demise. As the legal process unfolded, the Georgia Department of Corrections announced on January 2, 2015, that an ending date had been set for Brannon, marking January 13 as the day of reckoning. The announcement brought a sense of closure to a community still grappling with the loss of their beloved deputy, and it served as a somber reminder of the consequences of such a heinous act. In the days leading up to the scheduled ending, a clemency hearing was convened on January 12, affording an opportunity for Brannon's case to be reviewed by the Georgia State Board of Pardons and Paroles. After careful consideration, the board voted to deny clemency, reaffirming the gravity of Brannon's crime and the justness of the sentence imposed. January 13, 2015 marked a solemn moment in U.S. legal history. Andrew Brannon, convicted of the slaying of Deputy Kyle Dinkheller, became the first person to be executed in the United States that year. The solemnity of the occasion underscored the profound impact of Dinkheller's tragic demise, serving as a testament to the unwavering commitment of the justice system to hold individuals accountable for their actions. The aftermath of the Kyle Dinkheller tragedy stands as a testament to the resilience of a community in the face of unspeakable loss. From Brannon's arrest to the culmination of legal proceedings, justice was pursued diligently and ultimately served. The ending of Andrew Brannon was a solemn moment, provided a measure of closure for those affected by the tragedy. Deputy Kyle Wayne Dinkheller's legacy endures, not only in the hearts of his loved ones, but also in the pursuit of justice that followed his untimely demise.
An Atlanta Police Department officer set out to find answers about the case. Filmmaker Patrick Shaver says,
This execution nationwide in 2015 happened a couple hours ago in Butts County.
My real name is Aaron Lowry. My nickname is Skip Lowry.
Darren Mitchum, I'm the sheriff of Twiggs County.
God damn it, here I am. Shoot my fucking ass. Come here. Here I am. Sir, come here.
Anybody that watches this tape and doesn't have problems sleeping at night.
41 NBC's Alexa Rodriguez has more on Andrew Brannon's final moments
sentenced to death for the murder of Lawrence County Sheriff's Deputy Kyle Dinkheller. Dinkheller stopped Brandon from...
Good, come on back here. Keep your hands out of your pocket. Keep your hands out of your pocket, sir. Sir!
Andrew Howard Brennan, perpetrator. Career in the military. Andrew Howard Brennan was born on November 26, 1948, and his journey through life began in the backdrop of post-war America. He completed his high school education in 1967, setting the stage for a future that would profoundly influenced by his experiences in the United States Army. In August 1968, Brennan embarked on a path of service by enlisting in the United States Army. His induction training took place at Fort Benning in Georgia, a crucial initiation into the world of military discipline and training. In February 1969, Brennan advanced to the Artillery Officer Candidate School at Fort Sill in Oklahoma, a pivotal step in his military education. By July of that year, he had earned his commission as an artillery officer, a momentous achievement in his military career. Brennan's service took a significant turn when he was assigned to the esteemed 82nd Airborne Division, a division known for its rapid deployment capabilities and airborne infantry expertise. This assignment underscored Brennan's commitment to a life of duty and responsibility. In July 1969, he would receive orders that would lead him to the heart of the Vietnam War, where he would serve with distinction. Brennan's deployment in Vietnam placed him in the Field Artillery Branch, where he assumed the roles of a forward observer and executive officer within the 23rd Infantry Division stationed in Chu Lai, South Vietnam. This period was marked by the harsh realities of combat, as Brennan witnessed the tragic loss of a fellow officer due to a landmine explosion. The traumatic event would leave an enduring mark on Brennan, resurfacing later during a pivotal psychiatric evaluation in 1989. Brennan's leadership and adaptability were evident in his assumption of command over a company on 2 separate occasions, stepping in after the commander had fallen. These experiences underscored his resilience and dedication to his fellow soldiers, even in the midst of adversity. Following his tour in Vietnam, Brennan's journey led him to Fort Lewis in Washington State. It was here that he transitioned to the United States Army Reserve, a shift that allowed him to serve intermittently, contributing to the nation's defense for 2-week periods at a time. This marked a significant change in his military service, demonstrating a continued commitment to duty even as he navigated transitions within his military career. Brennan's dedication and proficiency in his military role did not go unnoticed. Over the course of his service, he earned notable accolades, including the prestigious Bronze Star and 2 instances of the Army Commendation Medal. These awards reflected the high regard in which he was held by his superiors, who described him as an astounding and exemplary officer. Brennan's record attested to his exceptional performance and committed to the principles of military service. Andrew Howard Brennan's life was shaped by a profound dedication to his country, marked by his years of service in the United States Army. From his formative years in the military to his deployment in the crucible of the Vietnam War, Brennan's experiences forged a legacy to resilience and leadership. His receipt of prestigious military honors highlighted his exceptional contributions to the nation's defense. Brennan's story serves as a testament to the enduring impact of military service on the lives of individuals and the profound sacrifices made in the pursuit of duty and honor. Later life and tragic demise. In the years that followed his military service, Andrew Howard Brennan grappled with the weight of his experiences, carrying the invisible scars of war with him. His battle against post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, was central to his defense during the trial that would ultimately seal his fate. Brennan attributed this debilitating condition to the harrowing moments he had endured on the battlefield, a testament to the enduring toll that combat can exact on the human spirit. The profound psychological burden he bore began to seep into every facet of his life, casting a long and distressing shadow over his personal relationships. In 1981, the strain became too great, leading to the painful dissolution of his marriage. The violent behavior stemming from his PTSD, while undoubtedly a manifestation of his internal turmoil, became an inescapable reality for Brennan. exacerbating the challenges he faced in his daily life. It was a testament to the profound and lasting impact that the traumas of war can have on an individual, even long after the battlefield has been left behind. A crucial turning point occurred in 1994, when the Department of Veterans Affairs took official notice of Brennan's mental health struggles. In an acknowledgement of the gravity of his condition, Brennan was designated as 100% disabled due to depression and bipolar disorder. This recognition from a formal institution highlighted the severity of the psychological wounds he carried, providing a tangible validation of the pain he had endured. It served as a stark reminder of the profound and lasting impact of his military service on his mental well-being, a reality that would ultimately play a pivotal role in the tragic events that followed. As Brennan's life continued to unfold, his struggle with PTSD remained a defining aspect of his existence. The acknowledgement of his condition by the Department of Veterans Affairs was not only a recognition of his individual suffering, but also a stark reminder of the broader issue of mental health among veterans. It underscored the pressing need for comprehensive and empathetic support systems for those who bear the emotional scars of military service. In the face of this uphill battle, Brennan would find himself entangled in a legal saga that would ultimately culminate in a life-altering verdict. His defense, rooted in the acknowledgement of his mental health struggles, would ultimately contend with the exigencies of the justice system. The clash of these two forces would shape the final chapters of Andrew Howard Brennan's life, leaving an indelible mark on his legacy, and serving as a powerful reminder of the complex interplay between mental health, military service, and the pursuit of justice.
Circulating around Dean Keller's name, Schaefer wanted to show the world who Dean Keller really was as a person.
And I'm not one for that. This is probably the only thing in my career.
By lethal injection Tuesday night for killing Lawrence County Sheriff's Deputy Kyle Dinkeller.
Kyle made the ultimate. I was a deputy at Lawrence County Sheriff's Department.
We were employed together at the Lawrence County Sheriff.
Sir, get back! Now! Get back! Get back! Sir, get back!
That lose those police officers, that's a huge impact that doesn't go away. So 20 years later...
He come to work, you know, he left his cards at the door. When he walked through that door to the Sheriff's Department, he had a smile on his face. He was ready to go to work.
Attorneys argued he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, which stems from serving in the Vietnam War.
He's at some point threatened that if he ever uses force again, he's going to lose his job.
Now! No! Get back! Fuck you! Sir, get back! No! I'm telling you now! Get back, sir! Sir!
Legal battles and refusal of clemency. Brennan's legal battles unfolded against the backdrop of a profoundly complex and emotionally charged case. Central to his defense was the assertion that he was not criminally responsible for his conviction due to reasons of insanity. His legal team, keenly aware of the debilitating effects of his PTSD and associated mental health conditions, argued that these factors significantly influenced his actions during the tragic encounter with Deputy Kyle Dinkeller. The crux of their argument lay in the contention that Brennan's mental state at the time of the incident rendered him incapable of fully comprehending the consequences of his actions. They emphasized that the psychological trauma he endured from his military service had left an indelible mark on his psyche, influencing his behavior in ways that were beyond his control. Despite the compelling nature of this defense, the legal system ultimately proved unyielding. Both the Georgia Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court refused to intervene on Brennan's behalf. This pivotal decision was delivered on the very day that had been set for Brennan's ending, underscoring the unwavering determination of the legal system to uphold his conviction and carry out the prescribed sentence. The refusal of clemency marked a critical juncture in Brennan's legal journey. It served as a poignant reminder of the intricate interplay between justice, mental health, and personal accountability. The court's verdict, while a culmination of rigorous legal deliberation, also raised profound ethical questions about the extent to which an individual's mental state should be considered in matters of culpability and punishment. Brennan's case resonated far beyond the confines of the courtroom, sparking broader conversations about the treatment of veterans suffering from PTSD and the challenges they face in navigating a legal system that may not fully comprehend the complexities of their condition. It brought to light the urgent need for a more nuanced and compassionate approach to cases involving individuals grappling with the enduring effects of military service on their mental well-being. Final moments and ending. On January 13, 2015, at 8:33 p.m. EST, Andrew Howard Brennan faced the ultimate consequence of his actions. He was executed by lethal injection at the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification State Prison near Jackson, Georgia. At the time of his demise, Brennan was 66 years old, bringing an end to a life marked by both valor and tragedy. In his final statement, Brennan extended his condolences to the Dinkheller family, particularly acknowledging Kyle's parents, wife, and 2 children. This gesture of remorse offered a glimpse into the complex emotions that Brennan grappled with in his final moments. He candidly addressed the weight of his protracted legal status, expressing relief at the prospect of finally leaving it all behind. A pastor then delivered a prayer, offering a spiritual moment of reflection and solace. With that, Brennan's life came to a close, marking a somber conclusion to a tumultuous journey. It is noteworthy that Brennan's ending took place exactly 17 years after the tragic shooting of Deputy Kyle Dinkheller. This coincidence added an eerie layer of significance to the event, underscoring the enduring impact of that fateful encounter on both families and communities. Life and legacy of Deputy Kyle Wayne Dinkheller. Deputy Kyle Wayne Dinkheller's life story is one of dedication, sacrifice, and the tragic consequences that can befall those who uphold the principles of law enforcement. Born on June 18, 1975, in San Diego, California, Dinkheller's journey through life would see him become a dedicated deputy within Lawrence County Sheriff's Office, LCSO, in the U.S. state of Georgia. His unwavering commitment to his duty would ultimately lead to his recognition as the 1998 Deputy Sheriff of the Year by the Georgia Sheriff's Association, an honor that serves as a testament to his dedication and service to his community. Dinkheller's formative years were spent in California, where he completed his education at Quartz Hill High School in 1993. However, it was his calling to serve and protect that guided his path, leading him to the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office. In March 1995, Dinkheller joined the LCSO as a jailer, marking his initial foray into the world of law enforcement. This early experience provided him with the valuable insights into the criminal justice system and laid the foundation for his future career as a police officer. In 1996, Dinkheller took a significant step forward in his journey by becoming a certified police officer with the state of Georgia. This achievement was a pivotal moment in his life, as it formalized his role as a guardian of the community. He was no longer just a jailer, but as a sworn officer with authority and responsibility to enforce the law, protect citizens, and maintain order. Tragically, Dinkheller's promising career and life were cut short on January 12, 1998, when he faced a confrontation with motorist Andrew Howard Brennan during a routine traffic stop. The encounter escalated into a violent shootout, resulting in Brennan taking Dinkheller's life. At the time of his demise, Dinkheller was just 22 years old, and his promising future was extinguished in a moment of profound tragedy. Dinkheller's commitment to duty extended beyond the confines of his profession. He was a loving husband to his wife, Angela, and a doting father to his children, Ashley and Cody. Tragically, Cody was born 8 months after his father's untimely demise, growing up without the chance to know the man who had devoted his life to serving and protecting his community. Ashley, at just 22 months old when her father was taken from her, would also grow up without her father's physical presence. In the aftermath of his tragic demise, Deputy Kyle Wayne Dinkheller found his final resting place in the Garden of Remembrance at Fountainhead Memorial Park in Brevard County, Florida. This serene and reflective setting serves as a poignant reminder of the sacrifice made by individuals like Dinkheller, who dedicate their lives to upholding the law and ensuring the safety of their fellow citizens. Deputy Dinkheller's legacy extends far beyond his untimely passing. his recognition as the 1998 Deputy Sheriff of the Year by the Georgia Sheriff's Association posthumously honors his exemplary service and unwavering commitment to his community. It is a testament to the indomitable spirit of law enforcement officers who selflessly put their lives on the line to protect and serve. Dinkheller's tragic story is one that resonates deeply with those who understand the challenges and dangers faced by those who choose a career in law enforcement. His memory serves as a somber reminder of the sacrifices made by officers and their families.
It can become easy to move on from those situations.
Kyle laughing, remember him cracking jokes. He always had something good to say.
The district attorney's office told 41 NBC's Alexa Rodriguez they heard there might be some last-minute appeals.
The state criminal enforcement team.
I was sheriff of Lawrence County from July the 14th.
I'm out the gun, I need help! Put the gun down! Put it down now!
As friends and family are talking about Kyle Dinkheller, they're feeling those emotions as if it happened yesterday.
14 years, it has kept me up at night. And that tape did it.
1987 till December 31st, 2004.
1078, radio 1018. Sir, step back now! Sir, get back!
Analysis and considerations. The violent and deadly confrontation from a traffic stop in 1998 had a profound impact on two Georgia families. Now, 17 years after the crime, Atlanta attorney Joe Loveland is representing Brannon at his clemency hearing, arguing against his scheduled ending. Loveland emphasizes that executing a Vietnam veteran with a bronze medal and no prior record, who also suffers from PTSD, is not morally justifiable. Loveland believes that the Georgia board, being the conscience of the state, needs to consider all relevant informations, such as Brannon's 100% disability due to PTSD, which is quite uncommon and indicates severe impairment. This information was not considered during Brannon's original sentencing. Additionally, Loveland presents evidence that Brannon was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and had stopped taking medication prior to the incident. At the hearing, Brannon's attorneys are also presenting letters from at least 20 veterans, underscoring the challenges faced by individuals who have experienced war trauma. However, for Deputy Dinkheller's colleague, Corporal Brain Stokes, these factors hold little weight. As part of the team involved in the search for Brannon on that fateful night in January, Stokes was present when Brannon was found and apprehended the following morning. Stokes plans to attend Brannon's ending, hoping it will bring closure and peace for law enforcement personnel and the affected families. In the broader context of society in 2015, the question arises of whether it is sensible to execute a decorated veteran who undoubtedly experienced significant trauma during his time in the war. The morality and logic behind such an action must be explored and considered by society as a whole. The Dinkheller video. The Dinkheller video refers to a recording of a tragic incident involving Deputy Kyle Dinkheller, a law enforcement officer, and Andrew Brannon, a civilian. This video has gained significant attention and is widely used as a training tool in police academies across the United States. In the video, Deputy Dinkheller initiates a traffic stop on Brannon's vehicle due to a suspected speeding violation. As the encounter unfolds, it quickly escalates into a confrontational and dangerous situation. Brannon becomes agitated and uncooperative, exhibiting erratic behavior. Despite Deputy Dinkheller's attempts to defuse the situation through verbal communications and commands, Brannon continues to act aggressively. The critical moment in the video occurs when Brannon suddenly retrieves a firearm from his vehicle and opens fire on Deputy Dinkheller. Tragically, Deputy Dinkheller is fatally wounded in the exchange of gunfire. The video has become a crucial part of police training for several reasons. The video provides a stark and real-life illustration of the unpredictable and potentially life-threatening situations that law enforcement officers may face during routine encounters with civilians. The interactive adaptation of the video is used to test officers' decision-making skills, specifically in situations involving the use of deadly force. Trainees are put in a virtual scenario similar to Dinkheller's, allowing them to make decisions on how to handle a confrontational and potentially lethal encounter. It exposes trainees to the high-stress environment that officers may encounter on duty. This helps them to develop the ability to think clearly and make effective decisions under pressure. The video serves as a powerful reminder to law enforcement personnel that there may be situations where using lethal force is the only viable option to protect themselves or others. Overall, the Dinkheller video is a valuable training tool that aims to prepare law enforcement officers for the challenging and potentially life-threatening situations they may encounter in the line of duty. It emphasizes the importance of clear communication, quick decision-making, and, when necessary, the use of deadly force to ensure the safety of officers and the public. Impact on society. The slaying resulting from this violent confrontation had a profound impact on society. It served as a stark reminder of the potential consequences of escalated conflicts during routine traffic stops. The incident heightened concerns about the safety of law enforcement officers and deepened public awareness about the risks they face daily. The video footage capturing the brutal nature of the incident also had a lasting impact on society. It brought attention to the dangers faced by frontline responders and ignited discussions about the appropriate use of force in such situations. It prompted a collective reflection on the need for improved training, de-escalation techniques, and mental health support for both officers and individuals involved in these encounters. Additionally, the case raised broader societal questions about the treatment of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and mental health issues. The defense's argument that the defendant's actions were influenced by his wartime experiences sparked conversations about the support and resources available to veterans who struggle with mental health conditions. This case prompted a closer examination of the long-term effects of military service and the responsibility society has in providing comprehensive care for those who have served. Overall, the impact of this slaying in society extended beyond the immediate tragedy. It sparked discussions, policy debates, and reflections on the complexity of law enforcement encounters, the challenges faced by veterans, and the collective responsibility to address and support individuals dealing with mental health issues.
Real good to the public, which is important when you're in an elected job, to have people that are responsive to.
If you're not related to the police officers, or if you're not from those communities, it can become easy.
Bill Harrell tells 41 NBC he hopes this brings closure to the Sheriff's Department and Deputy Dinkheller's family.
Put the gun down!
You can catch the film Saturday at the Hargrave Capitol Theater starting at 10, or on Sunday at the Douglas Theater starting at...
Cried. He taught me a lot. I mean, his attitude, if you knew him, it didn't matter what was bothering him.
Series of appeals with both the Georgia and U.S. Supreme Courts. Justices denied a stay of execution.
Lose his job. Is that true at all?
And his crown that he was able to deal with the public in the way that he did, and he was well liked by everybody that knew him.
Lesson learned. The tragic incident served as a sobering reminder of the potential dangers faced by law enforcement officers in the line of duty, prompting a deeper examination of the risks and challenges they encounter daily. One of the primary lessons learned from this case was the importance of officer safety during routine interactions with the public. The video footage of the confrontation highlighted the speed at which situations can escalate and the need for officers to remain vigilant and prepared for unexpected scenarios. It brought attention to the need for comprehensive and ongoing training for law enforcement agencies to equip officers with the necessary tools and strategies for diffusing tense situations and minimizing the potential for violence. Furthermore, the case sparked discussions about the appropriate use of force and the importance of de-escalation techniques in law enforcement practices. The video evidence revealed the intense emotions and heightened volatility that can arise during confrontations, emphasizing the vital role of effective communication and conflict resolution skills. It became apparent that law enforcement agencies should prioritize training officers in de-escalation strategies to minimize the risk of violent outcomes during encounters with civilians. Another crucial lesson derived from this tragedy was the need for improved mental health support for both officers and individuals who may have experienced traumatic events. The defense argument that the perpetrator, a Vietnam veteran suffering from PTSD, was influenced by his wartime experiences, highlighted the complex interplay between mental health and criminal behavior. This case served as a catalyst for discussions about the importance of identifying and addressing mental health issues within the law enforcement community and providing appropriate resources and support to veterans coping with PTSD. The incident also prompted a reflection on the broader societal responsibility to provide comprehensive care for veterans struggling with mental health conditions. It shed light on gaps in the support system for those who have served in the military and emphasized the importance of accessible and effective mental health services. This case led to increased awareness of the unique challenges faced by veterans and sparked conversations about the necessity of tailored support systems to address their specific needs. Moreover, the impact of this slaying on society extended beyond the law enforcement and veteran communities. It elevated public awareness of the potential consequences of escalated conflicts during routine interactions with authorities. This heightened awareness spurred calls for mutual respect and understanding between individuals and law enforcement officers, fostering a dialogue aimed at promoting safer, more constructive interactions between the two. In conclusion, the lessons learned from this incident revolved around the need for enhanced officer safety, the importance of de-escalation techniques, improved mental health support, and the broader societal responsibility to care for veterans. These lessons have led to advancements in law enforcement training, policies, and mental health initiatives aimed at preventing similar tragedies and fostering a safer and more understanding society.
Robert Frada's case paints a disturbing picture of a marriage in shambles and the dark descent of a man driven by anger, bitterness, and a desire to evade his responsibilities. Background: Robert Frada's case is a grim example of a heinous crime that occurred nearly 3 decades ago. It sheds light on the history and background of a former suburban Houston police officer who was executed for his involvement in a slaying for hire plot targeting his estranged wife, Farah Frada, in November 1994. Robert Frada was born on February 22, 1957 in Westbury, New York, USA. He eventually settled in Texas, where he pursued a career in law enforcement. Frada worked as a public safety officer for the city of Missouri City, a suburb of Houston, Texas. He appeared to be leading a relatively normal life until his personal life took a dark turn. The backdrop of his gruesome crime was a contentious divorce and custody battle between Robert and Farah Frada. The couple's relationship had deteriorated significantly, leading to a bitter legal battle over their children. The ongoing conflict and animosity between them would ultimately culminate in a tragic and shocking event. In November 1994, Farah Frada, aged 33 at the time, met a horrifying end in her own home's garage in the Houston suburb of Atascocita.
If she would have acted differently, if she would have acted differently,
to $1,000 and a car.
I saw everything taped off, and I thought I saw Farah.
She was shot twice in the head, and the circumstances surrounding her slaying were deeply troubling. It was soon revealed that Robert Frada had allegedly orchestrated a slaying for hire plot to eliminate his estranged wife. Prosecutors contended that Robert Frada conspired to have his wife slayed. He was accused of enlisting a middleman, Joseph Pristosh, to arrange the slaying. Pristosh, in turn, hired a hitman, Howard Guidry, to carry out the gruesome act. The motive behind this cold-blooded slaying was rooted in a contentious divorce and custody battle, as Robert sought to eliminate his wife to gain an upper hand in the legal proceedings. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Robert Frada vehemently maintained his innocence throughout the investigation, trial, and subsequent years on Demise Row. His claims of being wrongly accused only added complexity to an already convoluted and deeply disturbing case. Complex case of Robert Frada. The case of Robert Fratta is a haunting and complex story that spans over 3 decades, involving love, betrayal, slaying, and a convoluted legal journey that led to his demise sentence being overturned and reinstated. This narrative unveils the intricate details of the case, delving into the depths of Robert's life, his relationship with his wife Farah, and the heinous slaying that shook a community, and the legal roller coaster that followed. Robert Fratta's life took a fateful turn when he met Farah, the woman who would become his wife. Initially, physical attraction wasn't a driving force in their relationship. However, Farah's loving and caring nature won Robert over. Despite her engagement to another man, Farah pursued Robert relentlessly, displaying qualities that endeared her to him. Their love story was one of personality and character rather than mere physical attributes. Farah was petite, not fitting Robert's initial preference for larger women, but he felt that she was the one chosen for him by a higher power. Both Robert and Farah were meticulous about their appearances. Robert, who had grappled with insecurity due to his short stature and slender build, had taken up bodybuilding and martial arts to boost his self-esteem. Although he was often complimented for his grooming and appearance, it stemmed from his past experiences of wanting to fit in and avoid being targeted for his size. The idyllic suburban neighborhood of Humboldt, Texas, where the Fratta family resided, became the backdrop of a horrifying crime. Farah's slaying occurred in the family's garage, where children would often play. The peaceful facade of the neighborhood was shattered on that tragic day. Farah's routine of parking her car in the garage became her downfall.
He's lying. He's been lying all night. I mean, y'all ask him about calling the attorney. Who's your attorney? He doesn't even have an attorney.
Was already engaged to somebody from England, and yet she still kept pursuing me, knowing I was dating other women.
Awful. Like, I don't even know how to put it really into words, how much anger I have for her right now, but if it was different.
As she exited her vehicle, an assailant entered through a side door, firing 2 fatal shots at her. Witnesses from across the street saw the gruesome act unfold, helpless to intervene. The triggerman swiftly fled the scene, disappearing behind a bush. Shortly after, a car pulled up and the shooter entered in, disappearing into the shadows. A bitter divorce and a gruesome plot. Robert Fratta's troubles began with the deterioration of his marriage to Farah Fratta. The couple's relationship had soured to such an extent that they decided to pursue a divorce. Amid this contentious legal battle, the stakes were high, with both parties vying for custody of their children. Instead of genuinely desiring custody of his children, he filed for custody primarily as a strategic maneuver to gain an advantage in the divorce negotiations. By seeking custody, he aimed to avoid the financial obligation of child support and potentially manipulate the proceedings in his favor. This calculated move set the stage for the further deterioration of his moral compass. As the divorce proceedings progressed, Robert Fratta's anger and bitterness grew, intensifying his desperation to escape the impending financial burden of child support. In a shocking and morally reprehensible turn, he began to approach acquaintances and individuals with a sinister proposal, asking if they would be willing to his wife Farah on his behalf. The chilling request demonstrated the depths to which he was willing to sink to avoid his responsibilities and exact revenge on his estranged spouse. Reports indicate that he approached at least 7 people, effectively casting a dark net to find someone who would participate in this heinous act. The sinister nature of his proposition sent shock waves through those who were unfortunate enough to be approached by him. Eventually, Robert Fratta succeeded in finding someone willing to participate in his gruesome plot.
It was a premeditated crime.
Fratta hired a hitman to kill his estranged wife Farah back in 1994.
According to family members, usually he takes the children to dinner.
This individual would become the middleman in the slaying for hire scheme, facilitating the connections between Robert and the eventual hitman who would carry out the slaying. The middleman played a pivotal role in bringing together the elements of his sinister plan, making it a stark reality. The divorce proceedings, initially meant to resolve the couple's differences, instead became a backdrop for a gruesome plot that would ultimately lead to tragedy and legal repercussions for all those involved. The key players: Fratta, Price, Guidry. The slaying plot that unfolded in the Robert Fratta case was a chilling tale of manipulation, conspiracy, and ultimately a heinous act of violence. At the center of this dark narrative were three key players: Robert Fratta, the mastermind behind the plan; Joseph Andrew Pristosh, the middleman who facilitated the connections; and Howard Paul Guidry, the cold-blooded shooter. Together, they orchestrated a meticulously planned slaying plot with a chilling motive to eliminate Farah Fratta. Robert Fratta played the central role in this sinister conspiracy. He was not only the estranged husband of the victim, Farah Fratta, but also the mastermind behind the entire slaying plot. Fueled by bitterness, anger, and a desire to evade financial responsibilities in the context of a contentious divorce, Robert hatched a sinister plan to eliminate his wife. To create an alibi and distance himself from the crime, he had his children with him on the fateful night of the slaying. Robert believed that having his children as witnesses would provide him with an airtight alibi that would shield him from suspicion. However, Robert's meticulous planning did not account for one crucial factor: a trail of incriminating phone records that would later expose his involvement. These phone records would reveal the communication between key players throughout the night of the slaying, ultimately unraveling the conspiracy. Joseph Andrew Pristosh, often referred to as Joe Price or simply Price, played a crucial role as the middleman in this nefarious plot. He was the individual who facilitated the connections between Robert Fratta and the eventual hitman, Howard Paul Guidry. Price's involvement was instrumental in bringing together the elements of the slaying for hire scheme. One of the most damning pieces of evidence against Price was the pager leased by his girlfriend, Mary Gibbs, who was present at the church with Robert on the night of the slaying. Throughout that ominous night, continuous phone calls were made between this pager and the other key players, including Robert Fratta. These phone records would serve as critical evidence in the case, demonstrating Price's active participation in the conspiracy. Howard Paul Guidry, known as Howard Guidry, was the most sinister figure in this macabre tale. He was the cold-blooded shooter who carried out the slaying of Farah Fratta as part of the orchestrated plot. Guidry's involvement was marked by a horrifying lack of remorse and a willingness to carry out the slaying with ruthless precision. On the night of the slaying, Guidry waited in the shadows, prepared to execute the plan with deadly intent. He entered the Fratta residence, confronted Fratta, and fired the fatal shots that ended her life. His chilling confession provided detailed insight into the gruesome events of that night, including how he shot her once in the head, and when she still moved, shot her once more. Guidry's involvement would later become a pivotal point of contention in the legal proceedings, particularly concerning the voluntariness of his confession. Allegations of coercion emerged, ultimately leading to the overturning of his slaying conviction. Overall, the key players in the Fratta slaying plot created a web of deceit, manipulation, and betrayal. Robert Fratta, driven by anger and a desire to evade his responsibilities, masterminded the plan. Joseph Andrew Pristosh served as the middleman who facilitated connections, while Howard Paul Guidry was the cold-blooded shooter who carried out the heinous act. Their roles and actions would ultimately lead to tragedy, legal battles, and the exposure of a chilling conspiracy that left Farah Fratta dead.
Was not allowed to make any calls. I mean, I thought they might have had a tape somewhere in the room. I kept saying into the tape what time it was, and I want to call an attorney.
maybe I'd have even the slightest bit of respect for her for owning up to it and saying, hey, I should go to the cops.
Their names are Howard Guidry and Joseph Price-Dash. Neither has an execution date.
And her husband Robert facing the consequences of his horrific plot. The unraveling of the case. The investigation into the slaying of Farah Fratta, orchestrated by her estranged husband Robert Fratta, was a complex and convoluted process marked by a series of twists and turns. The police's initial suspicions centered on Robert Fratta, but it was the discovery of key evidence and a chain of events that ultimately led to the unraveling of this chilling case. From the outset of the investigation, Robert Fratta was a prime suspect in the slaying of his estranged wife, Farah. The divorce proceedings had been riddled with bitterness and disputes, and Robert had expressed a desire to evade the financial responsibilities that came with child support. His calculated move to file for custody of their children as a strategic maneuver was a telling sign of his motives. However, suspicions alone were not enough to build a solid case against him. The breakthrough in the case came when investigators discovered an address book in Robert Fratta's car.
Had his wife murdered to settle a divorce, something that millions of Americans go through.
He had the gun with him. He emptied the gun.
When I first got there, I initially thought it was a drug raid.
Within the address book lay a pivotal clue that would turn the tide of the investigation. The phone number of Mary Gibbs, who happened to be Joseph Price-Dash's girlfriend, was found within its pages. This discovery was significant because Joseph Price-Dash played a crucial role as the middleman in the slaying plot, connecting Robert Fratta with the eventual shooter, Howard Guidry. The connection between Mary Gibbs, Price-Dash's girlfriend, and Robert Fratta served as a critical link in the chain of evidence, strengthening the case against those involved in the slaying plot. Bank robbery and Howard's arrest. The unraveling of the Fratta slaying case took a startling turn when an entirely unrelated incident brought Howard Guidry, the man who played the role of the shooter in the slaying plot, to the attention of law enforcement. This unexpected event would ultimately expose the darkest depths of the slaying conspiracy. In a seemingly unrelated criminal act, a bank robbery occurred in Houston, and Howard Guidry found himself implicated. As he attempted to flee the scene of the bank robbery, law enforcement swiftly moved in and apprehended him. It was during this arrest that shocking discovery was made. Guidry was found to be in possession of the very slaying weapon that had been used to kill Farah Fratta. The revelation that Howard Guidry had the slaying weapon in his possession sent shock waves through the investigation. Federal records later uncovered a critical piece of the puzzle. The purchase of this slaying weapon was traced back to none other than Robert Fratta, the mastermind behind the slaying plot. This discovery was a pivotal turning point in the case, raising disturbing questions about the extent of Robert's involvement in the chilling conspiracy to slaying his estranged wife, Farah. The existence of concrete evidence linking the slaying weapon to Robert Fratta shook the foundations of his defense.
We talked to at least two people that she's made the statement that he said she'd be dead before she'd get out of the marriage.
The young girl, she still asks for her mother. Mommy, I love you, Mommy.
I kept praying to God, saying, is this the woman that you want me to marry? Because
It cast a shadow of doubt over his claims of innocence, as it now appeared increasingly likely that he had played a much more direct role in the slaying plot than he had previously admitted. Guidry's gruesome confession. Howard Guidry's confession added a gruesome layer to an already chilling and disturbing case. In his detailed written confession, Guidry meticulously outlined the events that transpired on the night of Farah Fratta's slaying. What set this confession apart was his careful acknowledgement of all his rights before signing the statement, ensuring that it would hold up as credible evidence in court.
The death penalty is reserved for the worst in America. It is the government and society's highest punishment.
When he did arrive with the children well after the shooting, according to family members, he showed no emotion and no sorrow.
And takes that paper and hides it under a flower pot on the veranda, on the patio.
Guidry's confession provided a bone-chilling account of the cold-blooded slaying of Farah Fratta. He described how he had patiently waited for her to return home, lurking in the shadows, knowing that Robert Fratta had his children with him that night as an alibi. As Farah entered her own home, Guidry confronted her, and in horrifying detail, he recounted how he had shot her twice, first in the head and then once more as she lay on the ground. The confession left no room for doubt about his direct involvement in the slaying plot. This confession became a critical piece of evidence, painting a gruesome picture of the calculated and premeditated nature of Farah Fratta's slaying. It revealed the depths of Howard Guidry's complicity and further implicated Robert Fratta in the heinous crime. The astonishing revelation. As the investigation delved deeper, it became clear that Howard Guidry, who had initially been thought of as a separate entity, was in fact Robert Fratta himself. Guidry had played a dual role, both masterminding the slaying plot and carrying out the heinous act as the shooter. Guidry's chilling confession, which provided explicit details of the slaying, left no doubt about his direct involvement in Farah Fratta's demise. The shocking revelation that the triggerman was none other than Robert Fratta himself sent shock waves through the legal proceedings, forcing a re-evaluation of the case. The investigation initially centered on Robert Fratta, but it was the discovery of Mary Gibbs' phone number in his address book that strengthened the case against him. The unrelated bank robbery involving Howard Guidry and the subsequent revelation that Guidry was in fact Robert Fratta himself added layers of complexity and horror to the case. This series of events ultimately led to a re-evaluation of the roles and culpabilities of those involved in the slaying plot, shining a spotlight on the shocking truth of Robert Fratta's direct involvement in the slaying of his estranged wife, Farah. The dominoes begin to fall. The first domino in this complex case fell with the arrest of Howard Paul Guidry, the cold-blooded shooter in the slaying plot. Guidry was apprehended for his involvement in a bank robbery in Houston. This unrelated incident would unwittingly set off a series of events that would bring the slaying plot to light. Guidry's arrest was significant not only because it led to the recovery of the slaying weapon, but also because it raised questions about the extent of his involvement in the slaying of Farah Fratta. At this point, Robert Fratta still maintained his facade, believing that the alibi he had constructed with his children would protect him from suspicion. Price confesses. The middleman's admission. As the investigation into the slaying for hire plot intensified, one crucial figure came under the spotlight: Joseph Andrew Pristosh. Pristosh had served as the middleman in the sinister plan, facilitating connections between the key players and coordinating the deadly conspiracy. With each day passing, the pressure on Pristosh grew, leading to an unexpected turn of events that would unravel the entire plot. The mounting scrutiny and relentless investigative efforts ultimately broke Pristosh's resolve. In a critical turning point in the case, he made a confession that would prove to be a significant breakthrough. With this admission, he not only acknowledged his involvement, but also provided critical evidence that further solidified the case against Robert Fratta. One of the key revelations in Pristosh's confession was the role that financial burden and a bitter divorce had played in motivating Robert Fratta. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, the prospect of paying substantial child support and the potential loss of custody of their children had fueled Fratta's desire to eliminate his estranged wife, Farah. Pristosh's confession effectively added weight to the case against the alleged mastermind by revealing the underlying motivations behind the slaying plot. With Joseph Andrew Pristash's confession and the mounting evidence against him, the investigative net around Robert Fratta began to constrict.
To murder his wife Farah in 1994.
Heartless woman, and I have no respect for her whatsoever.
The 3 children were with Bob Fratta last night during the shooting.
Investigators had diligently pieced together the intricate puzzle of the slaying for-hire plot, connecting the dots between the middleman, the shooter, and the alleged mastermind. Fratta's arrest. The arrest of Robert Fratta marked the culmination of a painstaking and relentless investigation that had unveiled the dark and calculating motives behind the slaying plot. The law enforcement agencies involved had worked tirelessly to expose the truth and bring the perpetrators to justice. The arrest of Robert Fratta not only served as a significant milestone in the legal proceedings, but also as a symbolic moment of closure for those affected by Farah Fratta's tragic slaying. It underscores the importance of thorough investigative work, the pursuit of justice, and the determination to unravel even the most complex and sinister of conspiracies. Fratta's life behind bars. Robert Fratta's life behind bars, which had begun in 1995, was marked by the weight of his heinous actions. His arrest and subsequent conviction had put an end to his sinister plot, but it had also led to a life of incarceration. While in prison, Fratta struggled to maintain his physical fitness, relying on basic exercises like push-ups and pull-ups due to the absence of weights in the yard. Fratta's arrest and conviction had exposed the disturbing subculture of bodybuilding, tanning, and an obsession with physical perfection. While many involved in this culture admired him for his dedication to his body, they could not ignore the chilling crimes he had committed. The case shed light on the dark side of the subculture that Robert Fratta had been a part of. Fratta was diagnosed as narcissistic and with an antisocial personality disorder, traits that fueled his ruthless pursuit of his goals, regardless of the consequences.
I was going to actually walk up to her and joke, "Oh, what do you got, a drug raid going on here?"
That'll be justice for me. I know for myself he's gone. Bullets on the bed, spent bullets, and
his obsession with physical perfection extended to his desire to control his wife's appearance, even paying for her breast implants. This control and possessiveness would ultimately lead to Farah Fratta's tragic fate. Fratta, complex obsessions uncovered. One of the most perplexing aspects of the case is Robert Fratta's fixation on physical perfection, which extended beyond his dedication to bodybuilding. Fratta's commitment to his workouts was extreme, with a daily routine that involved focusing on different areas of his body for hours at a time. This obsessive behavior was in part rooted in his narcissistic tendencies. He took immense pride in sculpting what he perceived as the ideal physique, often admiring himself in the gym's mirrors. However, alongside his fixation on physical perfection, there existed a darker aspect of his physicality. One of the most chilling aspects of this case is the fact that these unusual physical practices were not illegal, despite their disturbing nature. Fratta's physical preferences did not directly implicate him in the slaying plot, but they shed light on the complexities of his personality. Another enigmatic figure in this case is Mary Kip Price, Joseph Pristash's girlfriend. He was not only aware of the slaying plot, but could have potentially prevented it. However, she chose to remain silent, prioritizing her relationship with Price over the safety of Farah Fratta. Her actions, or lack thereof, raised questions about her motivations and moral choices. Mary's eventual decision to cooperate with law enforcement only came when she faced potential legal consequences herself. She was granted immunity in exchange for revealing everything she knew about the slaying plot. Her delayed involvement highlights the complicated dynamics surrounding this case, where self-preservation often took precedence over morality. Despite the shocking revelations about Frada's physical preference and Mary Kip Price's delayed cooperation, these aspects were not central to the criminal case against Robert Frada. Instead, the focus remained on gathering evidence related to the slaying plot and building a case against the alleged mastermind.
Investigators said he paid $1,000 and a Jeep for the hit.
One of them was here tonight. Frada never apologized.
In the punishment phase of the trial, the jury will have only two choices, either life in prison.
The investigation and subsequent trials exposed the intricate web of individuals involved in the conspiracy and the quest for justice in a case filled with complexity and moral ambiguity. Legal journey. The ending of Robert Frada for the capital slaying of his wife, Farah Frada, marked the harrowing conclusion to a protracted legal saga that unfolded over a decade. This complex case involved multiple trials, appeals, and a disturbing web of motives and actions that underscore the severity of Frada's crimes. Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg's statement encapsulates the gravity of the situation and the legal journey that led to this outcome. Frada's conviction and subsequent ending followed a two-stage legal process, which included separate juries and trials. The initial trial in 1996 found Frada guilty of capital slaying. Frada's convictions hinge on the compelling evidence presented during the trials. The prosecution argued that he had masterminded his wife's slaying as part of a sinister plot to gain an upper hand in their contentious custody battle. This calculated act demonstrated a shocking disregard for human life, particularly considering his status as a law enforcement officer, which he attempted to exploit to evade accountability. The legal journey included a successful appeal and a subsequent retrial, each reinforcing the guilty verdict against Frada and highlighting the heinous nature of his crime. The second jury, like the first, found him guilty of capital slaying and imposed the demise penalty once more. District Attorney Kim Ogg's statement served as a poignant reminder of the significance of Robert Frada's ending. She characterized him as the worst of the worst due to his calculated orchestration of his wife's slaying and his subsequent attempts to evade responsibility. Frada's despicable use of others to carry out the crime and his misuse of his position as a law enforcement officer to shield himself from the consequences painted a disturbing portrait of an individual devoid of moral compass and empathy.
Want to cook for me, clean for me, do my clothes for me. I'm like, this woman's wonderful. So,
and then the suspect was seen hiding by a tree.
And I have no care for her. I don't care what goes on in her life.
In essence, the ending of Robert Frada serves as a sobering reminder of the consequences of extreme criminal acts and the pursuit of justice through a complex legal system. Ending of Robert Frada. On the evening of the ending, Robert Frada, age 65, received a lethal injection at the Texas State Penitentiary in Huntsville for the brutal slaying of his wife Farah in November 1994. He was pronounced dead at 7:49 p.m. The U.S. Supreme Court had earlier rejected an appeal from Frada's lawyers seeking to halt the ending. However, prosecutors countered that the hypnosis did not yield any new information or identifications. They further emphasized Frada's repeated expressions of his desire to see his wife dead, including soliciting acquaintances for assistance in finding someone to carry out the crime. Joseph Pristosh and Howard Guidry, who were involved in the slaying plot, had also been sentenced to demise, solidifying the severity of their crimes. In addition to the slaying conviction, Robert Frada was one of 4 Texas Demise Row inmates who had filed a lawsuit to halt the state's prison system from using alleged expired and unsafe ending drugs. The lawsuit sought to prevent the use of pentobarbital, the drug Texas employs in its lethal injection procedure. The ending's fate became uncertain when Civil Court Judge Catherine Mozzie in Austin issued a temporary injunction earlier that day. Mosey believed that the pentobarbital might have expired and posed medical risk to the condemned inmates. However, Texas' highest criminal appeals court later overturned her injunction, and the state Supreme Court rejected an appeal, allowing the ending to proceed. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals had previously barred Judge Mosey from issuing any orders that could impede an ending. Throughout his legal battles, Frada's defense had presented numerous appeals, all of which were rejected by the Supreme Court and lower courts. These appeals raised concerns about insufficient evidence, flawed jury instructions, partiality of a juror, and a ballistic evidence that alleged failed to connect Frada to the slaying weapon. Last week, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles unanimously declined to commute Frada's demise sentence or grant a 60-day reprieve. Frada's tumultuous legal journey began with his initial demise sentence in 1996, which was later overturned by a federal judge. The judge ruled that confessions made by Frada's co-conspirators should not have been admitted as evidence. Additionally, the judge's ruling described Frada as egotistical, misogynistic, and vile, underscoring his callous desire to eliminate his wife. Subsequently, Frada was retried and resentenced to demise in 2009. Andy Cahan, the director of Victim Services and Advocacy for Crime Stoppers of Houston, highlighted the impact of Farrah Frada's slaying on her family. He noted that Farrah's father, Lex Becker, who passed away in 2018, had raised Robert and Farrah Frada's 3 children with his wife. Cahan expressed the hope that the ending would provide a degree of closure for the children, enabling them to continue healing and moving forward without the specter of Robert Frada hanging over their lives. Frada's ending marked the first in Texas for the year, with 8 more scheduled later in the year. The conclusion of this decades-long legal battle.
I miss you, Mommy. I know you're in heaven, and someday when I die.
Be a quick briefing tonight. Robert Frada was executed for the 1994 murder.
But she was only like 5'4" and about 116 pounds when we met. Well, I always liked bigger women then because
serves as a somber reminder of the enduring pursuit of justice and the profound impact of such cases on the lives of those involved. The Frada Case Legacy. The Robert Frada case, marked by a gruesome slaying plot, bizarre physical practices, and complex interpersonal dynamics, leaves behind a legacy that continues to intrigue and disturb society. This high-profile case serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human depravity, the complexities of criminal investigations, and the moral choices individuals make when faced with knowledge of heinous crimes. The legacy of the Frada case extends beyond its peculiar and disturbing elements. It highlights the challenges law enforcement faces when investigating intricate conspiracy cases where multiple individuals may be involved, each with varying degrees of culpability. The case underscores the importance of gathering compelling evidence, navigating the legal system, and ultimately achieving justice for the victims and their families. Moreover, the Frada case serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of manipulating the criminal justice system.
What her boyfriend was, because they were living together.
I was completely denied all that. Like I said, I was beaten, and this was ridiculous. And
grew to love her and fall in love with her for the personality that she was.
Frada's attempts to evade responsibility and his manipulation of witness and evidence ultimately failed as he faced the ultimate punishment, ending. In the end, the legacy of the Frada case reminds society of the capacity for darkness within individuals and the resilience of the criminal justice system in the pursuit of truth and justice. It also raises questions about the boundaries of loyalty, morality, and self-interest when individuals are faced with knowledge of heinous crimes. Lessons and insights. The Robert Frada case offers several valuable lessons and insights for both the legal system and society at large. These lessons encompass aspects of criminal justice, morality, and human behavior that can help us better understand and address similar situations in the future. 1. The complexity of criminal cases. The Frada case underscores the intricate nature of criminal investigations and trials. It revealed how various factors, from unusual physical practices to complex personal relationships, can muddy the waters and make it challenging to unravel the truth. Law enforcement agencies and legal professionals must be prepared to handle such complexities with thoroughness and objectivity. 2. The importance of thorough investigation. This case serves as a reminder of the critical role thorough investigation plays in ensuring justice. It took multiple trials and years of legal proceedings to secure a conviction against Robert Frada. Investigative diligence, including gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and verifying claims, is paramount to building a strong case. 4. Human complexity. Robert Frada's contradictory behavior, demanding physical perfection from his wife while engaging in unusual physical practices, serves as a reminder of the multifaceted nature of human beings. This complexity should be considered when evaluating criminal behavior and motives, as motivations can be driven by a mix of desires, insecurities, and personal history. 5. Lessons for personal safety. On a broader societal level, the case underscores the importance of personal safety, specifically in domestic situations.
Frada did not make a last statement. He stared straight ahead at the ceiling.
I'm glad justice has prevailed, freedom has prevailed.
But last night he told sheriff's deputies that they all went to church.
It serves as a reminder that individuals facing tumultuous relationships or custody disputes may be vulnerable to harm. Advocacy for support services, legal protections, and education on recognizing signs of danger can help protect potential victims. 6. The pursuit of justice. Despite its complexities, the Frada case ultimately demonstrated society's commitment to the pursuit of justice. Multiple trials and appeals were conducted to ensure a fair process and hold the perpetrators accountable. It illustrates the resilience of the legal system in the face of challenges. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.